Hey everyone, RemanX here, and you're going to see that I have my war ready roster, and this is going to come into conversation about how to prepare for war, what these war changes have started to mean, and kind of a deep dive into what I think you should do as an alliance to help you prepare for the next stage of war, and why it kind of feels bad, but it might be something that we can overcome because it's affecting both sides at the same rate. So remember, guys, if you guys are new to the channel, please like and subscribe. These do help this information get into the hands of everybody else in the community. And I hope you find these videos helpful as I try to break down my thoughts, mechanics, and help you guys understand the basics of this game. Welcome to Marvel Strike Force. So first things first, we're going to talk about realistically just the overarching premise of what war does. So it's basically challenging you to build a roster, and your alliance will go head to head against an opponent and challenging their roster and filling 10 bays full and getting, 10 plus attacks in to counter teams. So realistically, you need, and this is important to understand, about 100 characters ready for war. Typically, if you want to think about it, you probably need 105. You want to have 11 attack teams if because there's no such thing as a perfect war. So going into that premise is the basics of war going forward. You have to fill those 10 bays, have those 10 teams. Whether or not you need to put the war ready on them will depend on where you are. I've been talking to my Twitch chat, and they gave me some feedback, and a lot of people have about 50. That's about the median right now of characters that they have that have this war ready trait. So here's the impact this has. Okay, the war changes brought about a defensive boost that means our defenses are stronger than they ever have been. Because the cargo bay gives plus 20% and the hangar only gives plus 10%, defenses are now from the very beginning 10% stronger if they have the war ready trait. So punch ups, because of the fact that a larger alliance probably has more characters with this war ready trait, are becoming harder to do because the bigger the alliance, the more they prioritize their war defenses for ISO changes. That being said, it doesn't mean you're dead in the water. It means you need to understand the basics of what has changed. So you have to calculate that 10% differential in resistance, and the swing will hopefully get you in your favor. Now remember, pace of war is a big deal. I've seen people still punch up 30 to 40 million. It's just harder, and they have to remain coordinated. So the idea is, how do you do that? So it's activity early on in the war. Unfortunately, it's coming down to being able to be active, to take advantage of these early attacks and get some of these early teams down. As an alliance, you may want to revisit where your time zones are and find out, as time goes on, who can be online for these time zones, because that may have changed with the impact. Now that we're a couple of weeks into this, you should have some idea about what's happening, the pace of the wars, because for the most part, you're probably matching up against the same 8 to 15 war teams based on the ELO rating in your time zone if you don't move time zones. What an ELO rating is basically win, losses, the power are all calculated into who you match up against. And so a lot of the times you may be matching up against over like a 1 month period of time, probably you can probably track which teams you're going to match up based on time. It's a little bit different in the lower tiers because there isn't a lot of good data, and unfortunately there are shells appearing again. I don't get it. I do think that if you can maintain good attacks in the war, you probably should get some of the war credits. Just stay tuned. We'll give you some more information on that. So if you're taking on a team like Heroes for Hire, and this is the thing about it, is we're starting to see the 1.2 million teams plus in the base. It doesn't mean they're that much more powerful. What it does mean is you're going to have to account for the extra resistance that they're getting. Now, that resistance is amplified by a team like this. So one of the things that we've seen people do, and it has yielded good results, is changing your Infinity Watch to have 2 skirmishers additional to your Nebula. Now, it's specifically for this matchup. Now, with WeaponX around the corner, I'm not sure a lot of people have to make this change, but the value of Skirmisher has gone up if they are relying on landing any of the debuffs they need to. And it's always been something that I've always prioritized because of the fact that anything that needs to land a debuff, the second that it doesn't, the team falls apart. These are true for teams like your you probably had some issues more recently with your like Hella Natural, and probably some of your debuffs getting resisted and changing the speed counter on your against wave 1. And so you've seen people bring up to G15 Hulks because of the fact that they're just not landing debuffs on them, and the same thing with Captain America. So you're seeing these swings in war, and it's coming down to the fact that there is a 10% difference in that. We're seeing more timeouts for heroes for hire, and so the recommendation is literally kill Shang-Chi, take out Luke Cage, target Colleen Wing, and put it on auto, and hopefully you'll have enough of your team left over. So to be clear, the Skirmisher from Adam Warlock and the Skirmisher from Moondragon, jeez, just you'd think I would be top of mind, are actually clearing the extra buffs and making sure their debuffs are landing when needed. And so it's important to the overall team effect, making sure the stun lands on targets that you want it to. And more specifically, the disrupt for Luke Cage early on in the fight. All that being said, you're still going to want to make sure early on in the war that the best team is attacking at that time. And so what you want to do is just kind of understand who has the best attacking teams and make sure they're reserving your biggest team for the biggest defense. And so what happens is a lot of times early on in a war, if your best Infinity Watch is hitting in a flight deck, then if that swing doesn't go in your favor, you don't have that team, especially if there's a 50-60K differential. You want to make sure the biggest hammer is hitting the hardest to nail down nails. Right? And these are fundamentals for war that I think from a war management perspective that your alliance captains, your alliance leaders should take into account. But it's also the fact is I'm still waiting for API. If we had the API and the ability to see all of our characters, our players' rosters as an alliance leader, alliance captain, or even a member to understand what's been utilized, it would certainly be more helpful. And hopefully these things are worked out to the point where we get these relatively soon. Again, remember, I get the frustration for heroes for hire. We're trying to dig in to see about if they're actually getting quote unquote nerfed. I think that's a whole nother story. Stay tuned for that. But other teams that I think are getting a big benefit from this, believe it or not, are Wave 1. And so Wave 1 is something that I've seen people lose on a little bit more, and we're going to talk about why that's happening and what you have to account for here. So Captain America, one of the big things is he's got a decent amount of resistance for base here, and then you're going to see, because of the block chance, so his base resistance plus the block chance equals nearly unable to land debuffs on him. And then you have additional characters that'll have that problem based on that. The high focus, especially with the rewind. And because a lot of times you haven't flushed out who your counters are anymore. All right, you're going to see this happening specifically because you're probably facing a team like WeaponX on defense. And WeaponX on defense, they're going to have a lot more focus to land their bleeds and rip through your potentially amazing offense team and surprise the heck out of you when you fall over dead before you get an action against them. These are all factors that you have to take into. Characters that can apply offense down, characters that can apply offense up are going to help overcome that. So they're kind of characters that I think are sitting on your roster that you aren't taking into account. So sometimes in some of the counters that you have, this is going to be the high level stuff we were talking about, there are characters, either one piece or two piece, that do something unique that we are not taking into account. And so we're going to start with just one or two here, and then I'll make another video about this, the secrets lying in your roster. And so depending on how you have your power armor built up, maybe they aren't ready for war. but things like Falcon and Rescue can give additional speed up. But more importantly, you got this barrier and a small regeneration. But more importantly, clear all negative effects, offense up, and then immunity for 2 turns. So that's relatively important for some of the counters. You can actually use them as a 2-team flex to help beat some teams. Again, we'll have some of the stuff with the theory crafting. We'll go over that more in depth coming soon. We talk about some additional hidden gems in your roster to help build, to help counter some of these war differentials. Remember, I do things so you don't have to. And I've been going crazy with ISO testing for both war and raid and finding that things aren't working the way that I thought they were. So I hope I'm going to get some feedback before I finalize that tier list. Love you much.